Greetings to all of you who are joining us for First Liberty Live. I'm Stuart Shepard. California's governor is telling most houses of worship in the state to close their doors to the public. You may remember that previously he had limited how many could be in the building and definitely no singing at those gatherings. Well, churches in the state say they're being singled out, treated differently from other places where people gather. So today we're going to hear from a couple of people who are pushing back. We thought you would benefit from hearing their opinions about how to navigate through these times. Greg Fairrington, you see on your screen there, he's with Destiny Church in Rockland near Sacramento, which among other options is still meeting indoors in spite of the governor's restrictions. And we also, on the way and soon to join us is Sean Feucht. You may know him with Bethel Worship. His organization, Hold the Line, held a large worship service last Sunday on a beach near San Diego. He's walking through an airport right now and says he'll join us as soon as he can find a spot to connect. So we'll see him when he gets here. We also have my friend and colleague, Kelly Shackelford, who's president and CEO of First Liberty Institute, which has been actively defending churches around the country. And hello to all of you. Hello, Greg. Hello, Kelly.
Hello.
Hi, Stuart.
Greg, Destiny Church is offering multiple options for people. You decided let's do everything and give people a choice how to gather. Tell us what you're doing.
Yeah, well, when COVID hit, we just went to the online model, and that was great, and it worked for, I guess it was a month and a half, 6, 8 weeks. And our breadth of reaching people grew tremendously. And we were, though, always wanting the church to return to being an indoor setting. And so on May 31st, Pentecost Sunday, we took that step to do that. So we've continued our online presentation, went indoors, and then on July 19th, where our governor rolled back the 25% indoor number, no greater than 100, even though our auditorium seats 1,500. We decided to keep our doors open. So we didn't shut our doors, we kept it open, and got some national press over that, we are one of the few churches in the state of California doing that. So we offer indoor. We also have these huge crosses on our property, 45 feet in the air, the busiest intersection of Sacramento, Highway 65 and Highway 80 emerging together. And we built a shade structure that we just introduced this week, seats close to probably 800 people there. And it's a beautiful setting outdoors for people who are afraid to come indoors. So we have indoors, we have online, and we have outdoors, all options available.
And I see Sean is joining us. He's kind of popping in and out. Sean, I know you're on a tight schedule. So Greg, if it's okay with you, I'm going to get back to you in a moment here because Sean's got to catch a flight. Sean, welcome to the First Liberty Live. Thanks for joining us.
Glad to be with you guys. So thankful for what you do.
You held a large worship service on a beach near San Diego last weekend. Tell us why you decided to do that. You did it under Hold the Line, is my understanding.
We didn't just hold one, we actually held 5. And so we started in Redding. We went to LA. We had about 1,200 people there on the street in LA. And then we were in Bakersfield, had about 1,000 people at a park. Fresno in front of City Hall, we had over 1,500. And then, there we ended it with the big shebang on the beach in San Diego. And I don't know, there are estimates up to, 5,000 people there. So, I think that I was listening to the pastor on here, and I agree with him that there is this desire and this pent up frustration within the church to worship. And I think that, the governor and the craziness of the state has really overplayed its hand. And, people are ready to come together. They're willing to, whatever the risks they might have, which are the same risks that they have when they go to Costco or, they go to the water park and still open in a lot of parts of the state. But they want to worship and they want to exercise that First Amendment right that we have as Americans.
And you did this, I saw your t-shirt that says Hold the Line, which is an organization you have that's focused on political activism. Some people might ask, how does activism and worship go together? How do you answer that question?
Well, I think they're inseparable. I recently ran for political office. And, I never wanted to do that, never wanted to be in politics, but I felt like that it was time to like become the manifestation of our prayers and songs. I felt like that at some point it's got to be more than just a song, and you got to take action. At some point it has to be more than just a prayer. You have to take action. And so that's really my heart, is to engage a largely apathetic demographic of people that haven't engaged. I mean, you look at California, for example. I want to say that the stats are less than 20% of believers vote in this state. And, there's a verse that says judgment begins in the house of God. And so I think if we want to look at a turnaround in this state, in New York and states like that, we have to look at the church to really begin to engage on a greater level.
Hey, Stuart, one of the things I love about Sean and Greg is we're out there representing literally hundreds of churches all over the country during all this craziness. And it's one thing to represent and fight for religious freedom, but it's so awesome. We don't win anything if nobody's willing to exercise the freedom, right?
Right.
And so the fact that Greg and Sean are both, exercising their freedom, they're stepping out. I'm just so thankful, because otherwise I'm wasting my time going into court and fighting for freedom that nobody's willing to expend if there's a cost to it. But I do want to ask them, I know both of them, they want to follow the law. They want to respect authority. So it had to be difficult to come to these situations where they had to go out and do things that maybe they normally wouldn't do. And I'd love to hear how God brought them to that point, both Sean and Greg.
Go ahead, Sean.
Yeah, I mean, this is something we've been doing. I have, almost a 20-year history of going into dark nations. We bring worship into Iraq. We have a long-term team there. We've been on the ground before ISIS, during ISIS, now after ISIS. Same thing in other hotspots around the world. I've been inside of North Korea. Personally, I was in Afghanistan after 9/11. And a big part of our heart is to really bring worship into these areas and to see God change things. So I just never imagined that my own state and country would be a place where we'd kind of have to break the law to do this. I mean, I still kind of scratch my head when I wake up sometimes in this season thinking, what the heck kind of place are we living in? And, it makes me so appreciative of you guys out there fighting. I mean, I am so thankful for the work that you guys do and backing up courageous leaders. It enables me to do this and me to remind my wife, hey, there's really good guys in case we get legal trouble. And she's like, okay, we're not going to get sued or whatever, And so, it's just I've been so grateful, to have people like you guys behind us as we do this. And, my hope is that even with a broadcast like this, it will encourage other leaders to step out and do the same thing. And it doesn't come without a cost. There's a cost and there's a lot of pushback. We've gotten death threats. We've gotten, it's crazy. And sadly, a lot of this is like from church people. But at the same time, there's a whole army, I really believe, behind us. And so anyway, we're really thankful for you guys.
Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, when we opened up either on May 31st and then when the governor rolled it back on July 19th, there were moments of anxiety. We sat down with our local officials on that week before the 19th, and they were trying their best to urge me to step away from the conviction that I have in my heart. And, I'm a law-abiding citizen. I've raised my family in this community for 31 years. I love my community. I absolutely love living here, and the people who are in government roles, we have great relationship with them. And it's not so much defiance. I think defiance for defiance sake has no value. The reason is I had a conviction in my heart. Online is great, but that's not the New Testament model. And so just like Sean, we had threats that week on us personally, on our church, on our family, and there were some fearful moments. But I woke up Sunday morning with a complete peace. knowing that I was doing the right thing. I think my daughter posted something that day and just said, this is my dad and I'm proud of him. And so if I know the people who care for me and love me, stand with me, then I'm okay charging that hill. I wish other pastors would open the door of their churches. You know, I've been posting all week, hashtag open the doors. It's time for the church to meet together. It's time for us to assemble like we are supposed to do, because there's the power of people coming together when 2 or 3 are gathered together in his name. I know we can do it online, but there's nothing like doing it in person. And so I want to just challenge other pastors. You know, we've stepped out in the water. The water's fine. We're going to make it. We're going to establish our rights to worship. And it's time for us to open the doors.
Sean, what I'm hearing both of you say is this is not so much about defiance, it's about inequity. That you can go to Costco, but you can't go to the local chapel. Unpack that for us. What would you like to see happen?
There's, in my, opinion, which, I mean, you guys are probably way smarter and wiser than me, but I kind of see 3 levels of this. I see that, there's unequal treatment, there's unfair treatment, when the governor is encouraging protesters. Actually, I was going to read the quote this morning on Fox and I didn't get around to it, but he was encouraging them, to exercise their freedom. And he said, God bless you as you express your rage. And so you have unequal treatment, you have the constitutional right, the second thing. But then the third thing, and this is what really hits me, guys, as we've gone out, you have the spiritual condition of America. You have the essential nature of the church. And right now, I mean, our society is crumbling. I mean, we have more deaths by suicide in California than we have from COVID. You have alcoholism and drug use at an all-time high. You have marriages imploding. You have heaviness and anxiety. I mean, we experience this because every place that we go to and we host worship, I mean, people are throwing away their pills. They're about to commit suicide. People are getting saved. People are getting freed of the heaviness and the weight. I mean, we've been scattered. Businesses are hurting. Like the infrastructure of our society is crumbling. So the church meets those needs, and it doesn't happen through a screen. I mean, I'm thankful for technology, but you can't get the kind of impartation and healing that we're seeing God do on the beaches and under bridges. You can't get that over a screen. And so, that to me is what really drives me is that it would be one thing if we were hosting this and people are like, I don't really want to go to church. I'm fine online. But no, thousands of people are coming because they're desperate.
How you doing on time, Sean? I know you're at an airport there.
Yeah, they're boarding right now, but I'll hang with you guys as long as I can.
Okay. One more question for you then. If you could speak directly to Governor Newsom, if you could just go to his office, sit down, look him right in the eyes, what would you say to him?
Thing I would do is I would say, Governor Newsom, we have secured a permit for September 6th on Sunday from 5 to 8 p.m. in front of the Capitol, and we want you to come and pray with us. That's the first thing I'm going to tell him. And we're going to release a letter to him, me and some senators this week, because we're going to meet in front of the Capitol and exercise this right there in September. Second thing I would say is, it's just a bad look. Like, you cannot condone people to destroy our cities. I mean, and then nitpick on the church. I mean, it's like, it's one thing to say, be safe, less than 100 people, which I don't even agree with that. It's another thing to say that you cannot sing. I mean, that to me is literally the most outrageous. Like, I can't even comprehend where that comes from. And it's like I said this morning on my other interview, at best, it's hypocrisy, and at worst, it's bigotry.
You've also said that you think there's something larger going on here with this movement toward worship. Unpack that idea a bit for us. What is that larger something?
I think that I think that we're on the edge of a new Jesus people movement. And I'm speaking in faith because I believe it. I think that God's moving. I think that the situations are right. you know, I didn't live through the Jesus People movement in California in the late 60s and 70s. So you guys, some of you may know more than me, but from everything that I've read, the times feel eerily similar. And I feel like there's a hunger, there's a passion, there's a desperation. The political landscape, the economic landscape, the way the church is being attacked, the racial conflict. And so I just believe God's going to move in the midst of that.
Amen.
All right, Sean, we're going to let you run.
All right,
Looks like you already are running. Wow, and like that, he's gone. It's like
Wow.
that. Greg, we're going to circle back to you here.
Right.
As I understand it, you've got, and you mentioned this earlier, you've got the outdoor worship, you've got the online worship, you've got the in-person worship. My understanding is it's the in-person part that flies in the face of the governor's restriction.
Yeah.
Tell me why you decided this is something where you had to take a stand, why you and your congregation said this far and no further.
You know, I believe that the church has been passive. The church has been the prey instead of the predator. And so that's not the nature of the church. The church is to take ground. The church is to move forward. And right now we're moving backwards. And so I guess I'm just have enough in me of believing what the Word of God says. And then I don't feel like I'm a rebel, but I feel like, you know, this is the moment for the church. I said in my sermon on July 19th, this is the governor's thought. This is how he sees the church. He made the comment, and even our Congressman Tom McClintock quoted him. He says the church has little value and high risk. And so that's his prejudice. That's no scientific data behind that. That's his prejudice. He's prejudiced against the church. And obviously our governor doesn't understand what church does in our community. As Sean alluded to, you know, in a church our size of 4,000 people, there are people who have lost their jobs, losing their businesses, going through we've had people who have passed away who have been a part of our church for 20 plus years, and they can't have a memorial service. The governor doesn't understand grief. He doesn't understand that people need to come together, and these moments of tremendous crisis in people's lives, that's the church's responsibility. And so he doesn't have a understanding of church. I don't know if he's ever attended church or he attends church. I don't think he does, because he wouldn't have this perspective. Church is vital to the community. The community we are part, it needs the church. And so the standpoint of why I took this stand is because, you know what, this is what I've built. This is not a profession for me. This is my calling. This is what I do. I don't want a paycheck. I want to be able to stand in front of God one day, and I want to hear the words, well done. That's my perspective. So I'm not doing this for the applause of men. If I was doing this for the applause of men, I wouldn't do it. I'm doing it because this is my call. And so in that, it gives me the strength. It gives me the conviction to, if you want to use the word defy, I defy in the sense of this is my God-given call. This is my right biblically to worship, and it is my First Amendment right here in America to come together, and the Congress shall make no law, shall make no law. If Congress can't make a law, then our governor can't make a law.
For those of you watching, we have a gift for you that I want to tell you about. We put together our recommendations for churches and houses of worship as we all go through the process of considering whether to open the doors or how to have those services and whatnot. We've got several downloadable resources on this page. Just go to firstliberty.org, and at the top of the page, you'll see the COVID-19 link at the top. There are downloadable one-sheets about different aspects of this. It's our gift to you. It's all free. So again, just go to firstliberty.org and look for the COVID-19 link at the top of the page. Kelly, I interrupted you. What were you going to say?
You know, when Pastor Farrington was just talking, it just reminded me, I mean, what he's doing, what all the churches are doing around the United States is they're being really safe in how they do things. They're protecting people's health. But let's say that it wasn't that situation. You know, I immediately thought of Rome, and when the church really took off, it was because the church during the plague was actually ministering to people who were sick. And a lot of those church people were dying. And yet that's what exploded the church. Here are these people loving in the midst of danger, risking their own lives for others. And that really is how the church, began to really grow dramatically. And so the church has always been one to go to where the battle is, to go to where the suffering is, to bring. And we don't have that situation here. We have a situation where the church wants to bring it in a safe way.
Yeah.
And they're being denied. So, but it is interesting how this goes back to the very beginnings of the church and what the church does, which is love people who need to be loved in horrible circumstances.
Hey, Greg, I'd like to get I'm assuming that many of the people who are watching are going through this process themselves and trying to make tough decisions. Pull back the curtain a bit and tell us what it's like trying to make these choices and decisions, whether to follow the restrictions, not to, how to keep people safe while also trying to look after their spiritual well-being. What's that like on the inside?
Yeah, there's some anxiety because, I don't want to put people at risk. I mean, I wouldn't be a minister if I said, hey, I'm going to put people at risk. I want to be a blessing to families. I want to be a blessing to our community. So yeah, there's tremendous soul searching. And again, I see such the vital nature of the church that we cannot remove ourselves in this moment. I've already read that 33% of people before COVID are not coming back to the church. That's devastating. That is absolutely devastating. And the longer we keep our doors shut, that number is going to grow. And I think pastors have got used to, these, what I'm going to call fake numbers online. There's people who are viewing and all that. That's not engagement. When you come to church, that's engagement. You're buying into the local mission of the church. And so the money's been good. The money hasn't dropped off for pastors because people are giving online, people are watching. And so we are lulled into this false sense of security that the church is okay in this moment. And the church isn't okay. I believe God wants to use this as a reset for the church. It's time for the church to wake up. And I just would challenge pastors. I know that there's fear. I understand that fear. I understand the anxiety, but I would challenge anybody to come to my church. We have protocols that are not even required by the CDC. We're taking people's temperatures and they're standing, in line to get in the church 6 feet apart. We're asking people to wear a mask. We don't have to wear a mask. We're asking people to wear a mask. We set up our sanctuary in a way that nobody's closer than 6 feet together. And then we dismiss them single filely so they're not gathering. And none of that's happening at Costco. None of that's happening at Walmart, Target, any of that. So I would challenge anybody who wants to say, well, the church is putting people at risk. That's just not true. We're a safer environment 24/7 than probably any other environment that people are walking into as a group.
Kelly, I'd like to get your thoughts as a constitutional attorney about government setting up different restrictions, one set of rules for this group and one for that group. Unpack that for us as an attorney.
It's clearly unconstitutional. The government can't do that. In fact, it's really backwards. A lot of what we see, what's happening is they're saying things that are not protected by the Constitution, you can go do. But the things that are the most fundamental rights we have, free exercise of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assemblies, these are fundamental constitutional rights. These are that are at our highest echelon. And they're saying that they get somehow lesser protection. That's not allowed. And the way it works in the law is when there's something serious, a compelling interest like a pandemic, the government has an ability to, in a temporary fashion, override constitutional rights if it's absolutely necessary to meet that interest. But it's only temporary, it's only short, and it has to be proven out. Well, you can't say it's required when it's not required, at Home Depot, but it is at the church, or when it's not required at the casino, but it is at the church. So what's happening right now is clear discrimination and it violates the First Amendment. Now, people are confused a lot about what's going on. We've won all of our cases we filed all across the country, but there have been a few motions in other cases that have tried to reach the Supreme Court. I would point out to people, those are not case decisions. Those are emergency motions, which are almost always denied. So eventually we're going to get one of these cases to the Supreme Court. And I'm hopeful that when we do, we will really rectify a lot of the confusion that's going on below. But make no mistake, the most fundamental rights we have in the First Amendment, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, free exercise of religion, are still alive and well, and we're winning cases across the country when people are willing to stand up.
Greg, have you had any success getting other pastors to join you in this, in meeting in spite of the restrictions?
I've had some comments. I wish I could say a lot more, and there hasn't been. I have a few who are very much encouraging me. In Sacramento, I only know two churches, myself and New Season, pastored by Sam Rodriguez, that having indoor services. And so most of them are not even doing out. You know, the outdoor venue, which the governor wants us to, pursue. Here in, well, if you live in Southern Cal, it could be an option. Here in Sacramento, it is just hot and then it gets cold. It's not a long-term solution for the church. It's just not a long-term solution. I feel like, the governor treats us like this redheaded stepchild that he can push us around any way he wants to. And it's time for the church to unlock their doors and say, if we would all do it together, there would be such power in that. I mean, can you imagine all the churches in the state of California? Let's just say 70% of the churches say, hey, we're going to have church indoors. That would create a tidal wave across our nation. And I appreciate what Kelly just said, because here's one of the things, I think pastors read headlines and the Supreme Court twice now has shot down a motion, which, our legal expert, Kelly, tells us, well, it wasn't a case, it was a motion. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah, it wasn't a marriage decision. It hadn't gotten that yet.
Yes. And so that scares pastors. It scares congregations. And I understand that. And there's that fear. But, I just don't understand why we don't coalesce as a group and just make a coalition, hashtag unlock the doors. Let's go. Let's make this thing happen. And Sean talks about a move of God that's going to take place. I believe that with all my heart. That's what I preach. In fact, this week I'm preaching on Wake Up Church. It's time to wake up. But until churches do that, I think it's just a prayer. And we need a band of churches. And what greater place to have this, this move of God start on the West Coast. This is the last place. Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, LA. I mean, what an incredible opportunity for the church to make a witness just by unlocking the doors and say, we're going to have church.
Greg Fairrington, Destiny Church. Thank you for making time for us today. Really appreciate hearing from you. Very insightful.
Thank you.
I'll let you go ahead and leave the call. Kelly and I will stick around here, but again, appreciate your time and appreciate.
God bless you. Can I just make one more comment? I want to encourage.
Go ahead.
There is a hunger for God. Last Sunday night, because of the size restriction, we didn't want to bring it indoors. We had 1,000 people meet in a parking lot for an hour of prayer. So if I can get 1,000 people, and it was 105 degrees in Sacramento, and they came at 7:30 at night and they prayed and worshiped for an hour in a parking lot. So pastors, it's time to unlock the doors. People want to come to church.
All right.
Amen.
Hey, we'll be praying for you, Greg.
Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
God bless you.
You too.
Kelly, and you talked a little bit about what First Liberty has been doing in regards to all this. Unpack that a bit more, share a little bit more about specific cases that we're working on and places that we're active.
Well, we started knowing that there was no case in the history of our country in a pandemic. And so we really wanted the right case. And the first major decision was the case we had in Louisville on behalf of the church that was On Fire Christian Fellowship that was actually told they could not have a drive-in service where they were in their cars. Of course, there's zero argument there about you don't pass the coronavirus from an automobile to another. But it also is clearly discriminatory because you could be in your car in the parking lot at Home Depot or any of these other places. We want a really powerful decision, federal judge Justin Walker, a decision saying, hey, the Constitution is in place even in the pandemic, and this is a violation. This violates religious freedom. This violates the free exercise of religion. He even went into why our country was founded. We preceded that with other cases that were similar in drive-in, but then we eventually won the case that was a statewide injunction throughout an entire state of Kentucky with having in-service, in-person services as long as they were safe and they followed, social distancing and a number of things, which the churches are going to do. So we've won these, but what's happened is other lawsuits have been filed in places that maybe weren't wise, or maybe they weren't the best suits, or maybe they got bad judges, and they've created some precedents now on the other way. And so it's created confusion. So we're advising a lot of churches. I mean, there are major churches in California that we're working with right now because they're trying to avoid a lawsuit, but they're going to have worship, and they're figuring out how to do that, and they're standing their ground. So we're in the middle of a battle. Until the Supreme Court gets a case and decides it on the merits, and to let people understand what that means, these emergency motions are coming saying, we've got an emergency, you need to act right now. Well, the court disfavors that. That's not how the Supreme Court normally works. Normally what happens is there's briefs filed, there's 6 months of reviewing and reading all kinds of filings from everybody about what they think about the law, and then there's an oral argument. And then after that, there's still more analysis, and the court's very careful, and then they issue an opinion. That's how they prefer things, because they can think through everything. They can hear all the arguments. They do not like something that says there's an emergency motion. And so they've denied 2 of those now, one out of California, one out of Nevada. That's not a merits case. It has no precedent. They haven't done that ruling yet. And so we want to make sure we get a good case to the Supreme Court, or else what's going to happen is people are going to think the government can control our churches, that the churches are under the control of governments, even a local mayor or whoever wants to issue an edict. And we can't have that happen. So we're in the middle of a big battle right now, and we're not at the end.
And I think most of us are, frankly, a little skittish because of all the headlines we've been seeing day after day since early March to the beginning part of the year. What I'm hearing you say is First Liberty's position is this: we need to press ahead wisely and press ahead with wisdom and try to pick a path that keeps people safe, but also protects freedoms at the same time. Am I getting it right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, there are plenty of, for instance, the first case we brought on behalf of an in-person service was in a rural community where there were almost no, viruses, no Wuhan virus there. And it was a church that was large, but it only had a smaller number of people that were coming. It could be done clearly, safely, with no danger. So you don't have to start with your worst case. You start with your better case. You get those freedoms implanted and make it clear that the Constitution applies. And I'll tell you what's fascinating is everywhere we've won those cases on behalf of the church, soon thereafter, 2 days, 4 days, a week, not only did the churches all begin to open back up, but business, everybody began to open back up in a safe way. Freedom got restored to everybody. The church really leads the way on this. It's in the First Amendment for that reason. This is why it's our first freedom.
Well, if you think churches should be treated fairly alongside all other gatherings of people, you can make that happen through your support of First Liberty. The people that we represent never get a bill from First Liberty, and we're only able to do that because of your support. We're only able to achieve the victories you heard Kelly talking about, those outcomes that you're wanting because of your support for our work here. We think the church has an important mission and should be considered not just, frankly, as an equal, but because of the First Amendment, we should be especially protected because of those First Amendment rights right there in the Constitution. Kelly, you want to add to that?
Yeah, and I would mention, we're talking about the church. By that, we mean synagogues, churches, religious organizations. We're representing a number of synagogues across the country. In fact, in California, we're in court this week on behalf of a synagogue that's now been sued 12 different times to try to harass them from following their faith. So there's attacks going on all over the country. And I would just encourage people, this is one of those times in history, you know, I mean, this is kind of obvious. You've never experienced this before, right? You've never been in a pandemic where these constitutional rights were sort of up in the air. And what we don't want to do is get through this. And the result at the end is, if the government ever says there's an emergency, your freedoms are gone. Your church freedoms are gone. Your synagogue freedoms are gone. We can't end up there. So it's a crucial time to get involved, because this is a battle we have to win. I think we're going to win it, but you know, it's a battle and we got to fight our way through. And so if you're not involved in the work here, by praying, by supporting, by spreading the word to others, I highly encourage everybody to connect and get involved. This is one of those times in history that you'll be talking about for the rest of your life.
So if that's something you want to see done, just drop by firstliberty.org and look for the red Give button. It's right there on the homepage. You can't miss it. And we appreciate, let me just say thank you in advance for your support to make these outcomes happen. We appreciate it. Kelly, thank you. Always great to hear from you.
Thank you, Stuart.
And thank you for going all in for religious liberty.